Niece asked me 3 times that morning if her flower crown was on straight. The third time, I stopped what I was doing, crouched down in front of her in the hotel bathroom, and looked her directly in the eye. "It's perfect," I said. "You look like an actual fairy." She was 6 years old and wearing a white dress with tiny silver stars embroidered along the collar, the one we had found together at a little boutique on Queen Street West after 3 Saturdays of looking. She had pointed to it through the glass and said, that one, with a certainty I have never had about anything in my life. Her name is Poppy. She belongs to my brother, and she had been practicing her flower girl walk since February. My sister's wedding was in June. I was standing in the hotel corridor outside my room, Poppy's hand in mine, my husband beside me, when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Come find me before you go in. Use the side entrance on Bloor, not the main doors. I need a quick word." I called her. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Nothing. So the three of us walked around to the main entrance of the venue anyway, because we were already there and the ceremony started in 40 minutes. And Poppy had her flower crown on straight, and I was not going to drag a 6-year-old around the block to use a side door for no explained reason. My mother was waiting just inside the lobby. She was wearing a dusty mauve blazer, and the expression she wears when she has decided something and is going to tell you what it is whether you like it or not. She clocked Poppy first, then me, then my husband, in that order. The way her eyes moved told me everything before she said a word. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "Can we just step over here for a second?" She guided us to a corner near the coat check, away from the cluster of arriving guests. Poppy pressed against my side and looked up at my mother with complete, uncomplicated trust. "There's been a change," my mother said. Her voice was the careful, neutral one, the one that makes you feel like you are being managed rather than spoken to. "With the ceremony, specifically the processional, your sister decided last week that she wanted it to be a little more, streamlined. So the flower girl situation has changed." I waited. I genuinely could not tell yet where this was going, even though some part of me had already started understanding. She's going to have her fiancé's niece do the flowers, Rosalie. She's 4. It's very simple, very sweet. It just fits the aesthetic better, and she's been practicing since February, I said. "I know. We bought the dress on Queen Street. I know. And it's beautiful." "It is." My mother glanced at Poppy, who was now watching this exchange with the quiet alertness of a child who understands tone, if not content. It wasn't my decision. Your sister felt it made more sense visually. Rosalie has the red hair and it photographs a certain way. Mom. I said at once. Just her name. She pressed her lips together. "When did she decide this?" "Last week. She asked me to let you know before the ceremony. I tried to reach you yesterday." She had not tried to reach me yesterday. I had been home all evening. My husband had been home. Neither of us had a missed call from my mother. I looked down at Poppy. Poppy was looking at my mother's shoes. They were heels, pale gold, the kind my mother only wears when she's trying to make an impression. "Grandma," Poppy said without looking up, "am I still going to walk with the flowers?" My mother opened her mouth, closed it, crouched down, which was awkward in those heels. "We're going to have you do something even more special, sweetheart. You can sit right in the front row and watch the whole thing." Poppy considered this with the seriousness she applies to most problems. "But I practiced." "I know you did, baby. I practiced at home." "I practiced at the park. Daddy filmed it." "I know." Poppy looked up at me, and in that look was not a question exactly, just this simple, uncomplicated openness, like she was waiting for me to explain the world to her. And I had no explanation for her. I had nothing that would make sense to a 6-year-old who had done everything right and still been quietly removed from a role she had been promised. "We're going to step outside for a second," I told my mother. We went out through the main doors into the June afternoon. The street was loud, normal, indifferent to any of it. I stood on the sidewalk and breathed for a moment. My husband put his hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything because he knows when talking would be wrong. "Are you sad?" Poppy asked me. "I'm okay, Bug." I crouched down to her level. "Are you okay?" She thought about it. "A little bit," she said. Then, "Can we get Timbits after?" Something in my chest cracked open in the smallest, most bearable way. "Absolutely yes," I said. "As many as you want." My husband took her hand. I looked at the front of the venue, at the white floral arrangements visible through the glass doors, at the guests streaming in, at the coordinated navy dresses of my sister's bridal party glimpsed through the window. Somewhere in there, my sister was getting ready to be married. She had not called me once to tell me about Poppy. Not once. She had texted our mother, and our mother had left it until the last possible hour to say a word. We got in the car. My husband drove. Poppy sat in the back and told her stuffed dog about the flower crown, explaining each individual flower and where she thought it came from, with great botanical authority. I looked out the window at the June trees on the boulevard. Didn't cry. Held it. My husband found my hand on the console. He didn't speak yet. He was letting me arrive at wherever I needed to arrive. She knew, I said finally. This wasn't last week. She's known for longer than that. Probably. She just didn't want to deal with telling me. No. I turned back to the window. We were somewhere near the DVP now, the city opening up into sky and green, and the slow gray glitter of the river below. It looked peaceful from up here. It always does, from a distance. Poppy is going to remember today, I said. Not accusatory, just true. Yes, my husband said. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Poppy had moved on from botany and was now narrating what appeared to be an elaborate drama involving her stuffed dog and a rival stuffed dog she had left at home. In her version, they were both detectives. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. My father. He had been at the venue. He had been there the whole time, presumably. I had seen his name on the seating chart when my mother emailed it around 2 weeks ago. He had been there when all of this was happening and he had not come to the lobby, had not sent a text, had not done anything. Whatever he had to say right now, I was not sure I had room for it. Up to you, my husband said, without looking at the screen. I answered, Where are you? Not a question. My father's voice was tight, clipped, the way it gets when he is working very hard to stay level. We left. We're on the DBP heading home. A pause. Turn around, Dad. I'm not going to walk back into that venue and pretend. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. Another pause, shorter. I need you to come back, not for the wedding, not for your sister. I need you to trust me, and I need you to come back right now, the way he said it. That was the thing. Not gentle, not apologetic, not the managed neutrality of someone who has decided to stay out of it. There was something held taut under his voice, like he had been carrying it all day and had finally decided to put it down somewhere visible. Okay, I said. We're coming. I ended the call and looked at my husband. He had already found a spot to signal and turn around. Where are we going? Poppy asked from the back, noticing the change in direction. Back to see Grandpa. Oh, she absorbed this. Is there food there? There might be. Good, she said, and returned to her dogs. My father was outside when we pulled up, not near the entrance with the other guests. He was at the edge of the parking area, in the shade of a maple, like he had been standing there waiting long enough that he had found the most comfortable place to wait. He is 63 years old and retired from 30 years of running his own electrical contracting business in Etobicoke, and he is not a man who stands around waiting for things as a general rule. He looked older to me in that moment. Heavier, the way people look when they have been deciding something for a long time. Poppy saw him through the windshield and made a small noise of delight and was out of the car before I had fully stopped walking toward her. He caught her and lifted her and held her, and she patted his cheek with complete confidence in her own welcome. Hi, Grandpa. I didn't get to do the flowers. I heard, Pop Star. He held her for another second, then set her down. Hey, would you and your dad be up for checking out the courtyard out back? I heard there's a fountain with actual koi in it. Koi? Poppy's voice hit a register I hadn't heard before. Big ones. My husband looked at me. I gave him a small nod. He took Poppy's hand and they disappeared around the side of the building. Poppy already explaining to him everything she knew about fish, which was considerable. My father and I stood in the parking lot under the maple. A late afternoon breeze moved through it. I owe you an apology, he said. Dad, I was inside when your mother went out to the lobby. He said it plainly, no performance in it, just a fact he was stating. I saw her go. I knew what she was going to tell you. I stayed inside. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was your sister's wedding day, that it wasn't the moment, that I talked to your mother tonight, that we'd sort it through after. He paused. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. And you and Poppy deserved better from me. I appreciate you saying that. I meant it, even though it arrived about 40 minutes too late. and standing in it felt like finding an umbrella after you'd walked through the rain. There's something else. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out his phone, turned it toward me. A screenshot of a text conversation, my sister's name at the top. She had sent it to my mother at 11:30 that morning while I was in the hotel bathroom helping Poppy with her flower crown, while we were all still getting ready and excited and absolutely certain we knew what today was going to be. Mom, can you just handle the thing with my sister before she gets here? I don't have the bandwidth today. Tell her Poppy's role got simplified or whatever. Just make sure she doesn't make it into a whole thing. You know how she gets. And honestly, the red hair thing is real. Rosalie photographs better. It's not personal. It's just aesthetics. I can't be managing her feelings today on top of everything else. I read it twice. The second time felt the same as the first. Handle the thing with my sister. I was a thing to be handled, a task to be managed between hair and makeup and champagne in the bridal suite. She had decided this at 11:30 in the morning, and she had handed it to our mother like a notification to dismiss. She planned it, I said. Yes, this wasn't last week. I don't think so, my father said. I think this was always the plan, and the timeline just kept getting pushed until this morning was the only option left. I stood with that for a moment. The Mabel moved above us. Somewhere inside the venue, the ceremony was probably beginning. Come inside, my father said. I don't think I can do that. Not for the ceremony. That's done. I mean the reception. He looked at me with an expression that was tired and deliberate all at once. I have some things I need to say, and I need to say them in front of your mother, and I would rather do that with you present than without you. I thought about Poppy saying, but I practiced. I thought about 3 saying, but I practiced. I thought about 3 Saturdays finding the right dress. I thought about all the mornings I had watched my sister receive the careful consideration of our parents, while I was praised for needing nothing, for being low maintenance, for handling things myself. You're so capable, they said. You've always been so independent. And I had taken those words and felt proud of them for years before I understood that they had also been a way of explaining why nothing had ever been offered. Can I trust you? I said. I think I finally deserve to be asked that question, he said, and I'm going to try very hard to deserve the answer. I nodded once. We went inside. The reception had not started yet. Guests were moving from the ceremony room into the hall, champagne being passed, a jazz trio setting up in the corner. The room was warm and gold-lit and smelled like lilies and the catered appetizers I could see on a table near the windows. My mother appeared the moment she saw me. Her face moved through 3 different things in about a second and a half. Shock, then alarm, then the composure she reaches for the way some people reach for a railing. Robert, she said to my father, sharp and low. What is she? Could I have everyone's attention? My father did not raise his voice. He said it the way he says most things, directly, from somewhere settled in the chest. But the room responded the way rooms do when someone speaks with that particular quality of intention. Conversations tapered off. Heads turned. The jazz trio paused. My sister was standing near the head table in her dress. She had seen me the moment we came in, and something had happened in her face that I had never seen there before. Not anger, not the irritation I had seen at the lobby door all those years ago in similar moments. Something that went still, like a person who has just heard the thing they were hoping wouldn't be said. Dad, she said, this isn't. I know you think tonight isn't the time, he said. I understand why you'd think that. But there is never a time that feels right for this. And I have been waiting for the right time for about 20 years. So, he paused. I want to be direct, because I think directness is the thing our family has been most short on. The room had gone fully quiet. The jazz trio had set down their instruments. My sister's new husband was standing near the bar, watching my father with an expression I couldn't quite place. This morning, my father said, your sister and her husband brought their daughter to this venue to fulfill a role she had been promised for 4 months. Poppy is 6 years old. She has been practicing since February. She had a dress. She knew the song, and she was told, in a hotel lobby, 40 minutes before the ceremony, by her grandmother, that her role had been given to someone else. My mother said his name, very quietly. I was inside when that happened, my father continued. I knew it was happening. I stayed inside because I told myself it wasn't the moment. He stopped. I was wrong. And I want to say that clearly, in front of everyone, because the people in this room who have watched our family for years deserve to understand that what happened this morning was not acceptable, and it is not going to continue. My sister's jaw was set. You're doing this at my wedding reception. I'm doing this because you texted your mother at 11:30 this morning and asked her to handle the thing with your sister. He said it without heat, which was almost harder to listen to than if he'd been angry. I'm doing this because that text is not an anomaly. It is a pattern. And I have been part of that pattern by staying quiet every time the moment didn't feel right. The room had the particular quality of held breath. No one was looking at their phones. No one was reaching for their champagne. I spoke to our financial advisor last week, my father said. The arrangements I've had in place for the past several years are being changed. The TFSA accounts I set up with the intention of splitting things equally between my daughters are being revised, effective immediately. The conditional transfer on the cottage property is being removed. He looked at my sister and his voice stayed even, the way a line stays straight when someone holds both ends carefully. I love you. That is not in question. But I have spent a long time confusing love with protection from consequence, and I think that has not served any of us. My mother said something in a low voice that I couldn't quite hear. Whatever it was, my father listened to it and then turned to me. I should have come to that lobby, he said. I should have come to every moment in the last 15 years where I stayed inside, telling myself it wasn't time. I'm sorry I didn't. I had been holding things together since the hotel corridor. I had held it in the lobby, and in the car, and in the parking lot, and walking into this room. I had a reasonably long record of holding things together in front of people, developed out of years of being the daughter who was expected to take things in stride. I stopped holding it together. Not in a scene. Not in a way that required anything from anyone in that room. Just, my eyes did the thing that eyes do when they have been carrying something for a long time, and the weight finally shifts. And I let them. I stopped trying to prevent it. Thank you, I said. It was the only thing that came. My mother said something sharp to my father about timing and about what she had sacrificed and about the fact that he was doing this here. My sister picked up her champagne glass from the table in a very precise way and looked at me with an expression I had never decoded in her before. Not anger, not dismissal, something that looked almost like recognition, and under it, something else. The look of someone who has just understood that a thing they have been counting on is different than they thought it was. My father told me quietly that my husband and Poppy were still in the courtyard. I went. The courtyard was cool and smelled like wet stone and the cedar planters along the wall. String lights had been strung between the posts, the kind that buzz softly and turn everything a warm amber. My husband was crouched at the edge of the koi pond with Poppy pressed against his arm, both of them motionless, watching the water. She found the big orange one, my husband said quietly when he heard me. He's enormous, Poppy said with reverence. I stood next to my husband and he looked at me, really looked, the way he always does, reading whatever is written on my face without asking me to translate it. Your dad changed the accounts, I said. A pause. In front of the reception guests. In front of the reception guests. And exhaled slowly. Okay. He apologized. To me. In front of everyone. My husband said nothing for a moment. Then he put his arm around me and we stood together at the edge of the pond while Poppy narrated the movements of the orange koi with a quiet, focused authority. From inside the venue, through the glass and the stone, I could hear the elevated sound of voices, and then my mother's voice, and then silence for a long time, and then a door. Mommy, Poppy said, without looking up from the pond. Do you think the big orange one is the dad of all the other ones? He could be. He looks like a dad. How does a dad koi look? She considered this seriously. Bigger, she said, and a little bit slow. My husband made a sound that was supposed to be a cough. It was not entirely a cough. I crouched next to Poppy and watched the fish move in the dark water. The string lights made everything amber and slow. Somewhere behind us, my sister was having her wedding reception. I didn't think about what was happening in that room. I thought about 6-year-old certainty and the dress on Queen Street and the way Poppy had said, but I practiced in a voice that didn't complain, didn't perform. Just stated the truest thing she knew and waited to see what the world would do with it. We found a Tim Hortons on the way home. Poppy got a hot chocolate and a Boston cream and ate the Boston cream with a focused reverence usually reserved for religious ceremony. She still had her flower crown on. She wore it into the restaurant and through the drive home, and she was still wearing it when my husband carried her in from the car, asleep. The crown slightly tilted, one silk flower bent at an angle. He laid her down and I straightened the crown before he could take it off. He looked at me. Leave it on, I said. She earned it. My father called 2 days later. He told me the financial changes were real and had been initiated before the wedding, not after, that he had started conversations with their advisors 3 weeks earlier, that the text my mother had forwarded him had not been the beginning of his reckoning, but the last clear thing that confirmed what he had already been moving toward privately. The TFSA balances were being equalized. The cottage, which my parents had spent years quietly discussing as my sister's eventual inheritance, while telling me we would cross that bridge when we came to it, was being returned to the estate to be divided equally under the will. He also told me something I had not known, a piece of jewelry my grandmother had left, an antique brooch she had worn every Christmas, one I had loved as a child. I had been told it was lost in the move when she passed. It had not been lost. My mother had given it to my sister at some point, quietly, without discussion, because, as she explained when my father confronted her about it, she had always assumed my sister would appreciate it more. I sat with that for a long time. My husband and I drove out to see my father alone, without the children, on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks later. We sat on the back deck of the house in a Tobacoke with coffee, and he talked to me the way he hadn't in years, maybe ever, about the choices he had let happen, about the way my self-sufficiency had been used as a quiet justification for giving me less, about the times he had noticed and said nothing and told himself it would balance out eventually. He didn't perform any of it. He just stated the facts and let me respond to them however I needed to. When I got angry, and I did, sitting on that back deck in the early July sun, I got genuinely angry. The kind I had been storing in careful installments for 15 years. He didn't manage it. He didn't smooth it over or redirect me or make a gentle noise that suggested I was being somewhat unreasonable. He sat with it. He let it be what it was. That might have been the thing I waited longest for someone in that family to do. The brooch came by registered mail 6 weeks after the reception. Small box, brown paper, my name on the front. My mother did not include a note. I don't know if that was shame or pragmatism or something else entirely, and I have spent less time wondering about it than I expected. I wore it for the first time on a Tuesday in October. No occasion. I pinned it to my coat before I left for work, just to wear it, just because it was mine and I could. Poppy saw it when I picked her up from school that afternoon. She stopped on the front steps, backpack half hanging off one shoulder, and looked at it with great seriousness. "That's fancy," she said. "It was my grandmother's," I said. "Your great-great-grandmother." She leaned in and looked at it very carefully, the way she had looked at the koi. "Is it a bird?" "A peacock." "Peacocks are the fancy ones," she said, with complete authority, and then ran toward the car because she had spotted my husband in the driver's seat and had information to tell him that apparently could not wait. I watched her go. Then I looked down at the brooch, at the small enameled peacock against my coat, and I thought about my grandmother wearing it to Christmas dinner every year. And I thought about the dress on Queen Street and the flower crown and the koi pond and my father's voice in the parking lot under the maple. I thought about Poppy saying, "But I practiced," and meaning it in the clearest, simplest, most uncomplicated way. My sister texted me in November. It was a long text, clearly written and rewritten, and it said things like, "I don't think I saw what I was doing clearly, and I know. Sorry isn't enough. But I wanted you to know I know, and I'm not asking you to forget it. I just wanted to say it." It was not a perfect text. It left out several things that belonged in it. But it was real in a way I had not expected from her, and I sat with it for 3 days before I answered. When I did, I kept it short. I said I appreciated her sending it. I said I wasn't ready to act like it hadn't happened. I said maybe there was a version of a relationship we could eventually build, but it would have to be something different than what we'd had before, built from scratch, deliberately, without the old architecture holding it up. She replied, "Okay, whenever you're ready. If you're ever ready, I'll be here." I don't know what that becomes. I genuinely don't. What I know is this. The morning it all happened, standing in that hotel corridor with my niece's hand in mine and the flower crown on her head and the whole day still theoretically ahead of us, I thought I was about to walk into something I belonged to. I thought the worst thing was being sent back from the door. It took me a while to understand that the door itself had not been worth walking through. Not the one they had built. Not the one where I was required to be grateful for whatever portion I was handed, and call it enough. My father calls every Sunday now. He and Poppy have a ritual, where she tells him one fact she learned that week, and he has to guess if it's real or made up. She cheats constantly, and he pretends he can't tell, and they are both extremely pleased with themselves about this. He came to her school concert in December and sat in the third row and clapped for everything, including the song that was objectively not very good. My husband, for the record, has been telling me since the year we got married that I deserve more from my family than I allowed myself to ask for. I nodded when he said it and filed it somewhere I didn't look too often. I look at it now. The brooch sits on my dresser when I'm not wearing it, on a small dish my husband brought home from a market in Kensington. Some mornings I put it on before I've decided where I'm going or what the day is going to look like, just because it fits. Just because it's mine and it was always supposed to be. I've been thinking about what it actually costs to say nothing, not the dramatic kind of silence, not the silence of someone who's afraid or someone who doesn't care, the other kind, the silence of a person who cares very much, who sees exactly what's happening, and who decides, again and again, that this particular moment isn't quite the right one to speak. My father did that for a long time. I'm not angry at him for it anymore, not in the sharp way I was sitting on that back deck in a Toba Coke in July, but I do think about it. About what accumulates in the space between all those almost moments. What I know now is that the cost doesn't disappear just because no one's tracking it. It goes somewhere. It goes into the people who are waiting and watching and adjusting themselves to fit inside a space that keeps quietly shrinking. I did that for years. I called it being independent. I called it not making things difficult. I got very good at it. And people praised me for it, and for a long time I took the praise and didn't look too closely at what it was covering. Poppy is 6. She doesn't have the vocabulary for what happened to her at that venue in June, but she has the memory of it. She has the memory of practicing her walk and choosing her dress and asking 3 times if her crown was straight, and then standing in a lobby being told that her role had been given to someone else because the other girl photographed better. Children don't file those moments away as insignificant. They file them under, this is how the world works, and they carry that forward into every room they walk into after. That's the part that got me. Not the insult to me. I've absorbed enough of those that I have a fairly developed tolerance. It was the fact that Poppy was being given her first lesson in what she was worth to certain people, and she was 6 years old, and she hadn't done a single thing wrong. What I've come to understand is that the people who raised me weren't cruel in any deliberate, calculated way. They were just operating on a set of assumptions they'd never examined, that my sister needed more, that I could handle less, that the balance would sort itself out eventually. And those assumptions, repeated quietly across 20 years of small decisions, had built something, a structure, one that everyone inside it had stopped being able to see clearly because they'd lived inside it too long. My father saw it eventually. I think he'd been seeing it for a while, and the text message, "Handle the thing with my sister," was just the moment where he couldn't file it away anymore. That's how it usually works. Not a single revelation. A slow accumulation that finally reaches the place where silence costs more than speaking. What I keep returning to is this. Integrity isn't a feeling. It's a practice. It's the thing you do when the moment is inconvenient, when the room is full of people, when the timing is terrible and you do it anyway because the alternative is becoming someone who only ever meant well. My father finally practiced it in a hotel reception hall in June, in front of 40 guests, in his good jacket, with his voice perfectly level. It was too late in some ways. It was also exactly on time. Poppy told her stuffed dog about the koi on the way home. She's not mentioned the flower crown since, except once, in October, when she saw a photo of herself wearing it and said it was her best hat. She's going to be okay. She's more than okay. She has a father who filmed her practicing, a mother who loves her without condition, and a grandfather who shows up to school concerts and sits in the third row and claps for everything. That's not nothing. That's actually most of what matters.